Hey witches, it's Lee and this is Do the Magical Thing, and I thought we'd have a little chat about magic of place and space, specifically the home, as that's where we tend to spend most of our time and do most of our magical workings. And I think, sometimes we're so busy doing the magical thing, we forget that what we're in or where we are and how we can incorporate that location as part of the magic, as an active participant. And this taps into certain animist principles, the idea that everything, including inanimate objects like structures and buildings, has a certain essence to it and can be interacted with. And for me this makes sense because not only do I agree with animism, but it's also the sense that if we're all made up of universal matter, then we are connected. And so via that connection we can communicate in some way. This may not be the sort of immediately obvious human way of speaking. Trees communicate. They communicate via gas and via fungal networks. I think it doesn't have to be one particular way or a traditional sort of sense of communication. So we really want to work out how we go about this and how that communication affects our spaces. Well, I wanted to have a little think. Have you been to a certain place that makes you feel a particular way when you've been there? Whether you've been there before or whether you've been there and it's the first time. Have a little think. Has there been a space for you that's felt different? It's just felt like something about it. It's just a feeling. I've certainly had that over the years in different places and spaces and in different homes. And the common denominator for me is that there's been a certain amount of energy that's gone into that place to make it feel that way. If it's a family home, that will feel a certain way for better or worse. If it's a outside structure, maybe there's been maybe it's some sort of site of great sacredness. Maybe it's a site that's had seen some kind of hardship. There's certain things I feel that get imprinted into a space that we can pick up on. And when we as modern witches are incorporating ourselves into house magic, what we're thinking of is creating that space, because sometimes structures that we exist in are very new. They don't feel like the traditional witch's cottage or whatever, and they don't have to be that. It's nice and the aesthetic of that is nice, but the reality is any space we can put the energy into and make the effort to be some kind of magical space and location. Now, very mundanely, we can do this by two things. We can do it by cleaning and tidying. And this sounds really basic, but just this act of cleaning and tidying is an act of respect not only to your home, but to yourself. And it opens you up to the wider community, because when you've got a home that you are proud of and you're happy of or with, you can share it with other people. You can build that sense of community, whether that's just with family or whether it's with friends or with the wider community itself. And through doing this, you are then incorporating more energy into your home and building up those memories and doing all those little drips until you have this great wave of feeling that you can experience just by walking through the door. Now, this whole sort of cleaning and tidying thing, obviously different people have different energy levels, different abilities and different schedules. Not everyone's got the same amount of time. Whatever you can do is fine, is valid, yeah? And with the cleaning, it's something that we have to do anyway, so why not make it magical? Why not incorporate certain oils or certain sprays? Why not wipe in a certain direction, clockwise to draw in good stuff and anti-clockwise to banish? Why not open the windows and burn some incense or put on some essential oils in a diffuser, something like that, to imbue the air with something there, to freshen things up? And it's not just cleaning, it's not just tidying, but cooking too. That's a great way to incorporate magic, by being mindful of what ingredients we're using. Basic things like salt, but more specifically with herbs and certain things like that. That's a great way to incorporate magic into the home and really, really being mindful of what you're actually doing. In the morning when you have your coffee, there's that old thing, stirring in the good stuff, whether it's just a tea bag, whether it's just a coffee itself, or whether it's, a bit of sugar in there too, but just stirring itself round and having a little idea of what your day's going to be and focusing on that as you do it. It's got a mindfulness there. And again, that clockwise rotation to draw things towards you. And I think with this, it's very simple things, very much stuff that you do. And if we're washing ourselves, there are certain things that we can do there, and we can certainly have a sense of putting little rituals in, little cleansing rituals as we wash ourselves physically. We can visualise, or we can speak to visualise, or we can just very much literally wash ourselves down, and that's another way of incorporating that magic of the home and being grateful. And I think being grateful is one of those things that's touted about a lot, and it's sometimes used to invalidate genuine inequality and genuine issues with access to things. But having some kind of sense of gratitude can be really helpful. For me, I think I often ask myself, when was the last time, and I'll ask you too, when was the last time you thanked your home? Have you ever thanked your home? And this isn't a moment of shame, it's just a thought to just explore a little bit, because what I tend to do is I tend to use touch a lot. We're talking about communication and structure. I tend to touch the walls and touch the doors and things like that, and imbue it with a sense of gratitude, a sense of thanks, a thanking of the walls because they hold up this structure, a thanking of the ceiling and the roof because it keeps us all sheltered, a thanking of the windows and doors because they keep whatever we want out or in. And we also have fantastic facilities in terms of cooking and washing. All this stuff seems really basic, doesn't it? But it's not, and it's not, everybody doesn't have this. And I think having that moment of thanks and of imbuing that thanks into the structure, it makes the structure feel valued, Whenever we thank something, the person feels valued, it feels seen. And I think for me, having lived in different structures over the years, older structures certainly have a sense of time and the wearing of time and people living there. Newer structures sometimes need to be woken up a little bit. And that would be my general advice, is if you feel like a home is just very much a building to you, putting that energy in, exchanging that energy, really helps you to wake up and shake things up a little bit and really start this practice and start the sense of feeling. Because in the future, if someone else is living in where you are now, you want that sense of the place to be something positive, to be something that is enticing, that is a home, not just a house. And so that's very much something that I'm keen to do, is to really imbue. And you can assign different colours to different spaces as well. So if we're decorating, and when we decorated our current home, it was very much deliberate in terms of the colours we were using as to what we were trying to say about each room. And in terms of what we put in each room, it's like, does this add to this energy? Does it take away from it? And again, this is something that says, each thing has its own essence, its own value. And whether this is just a psychological thing of like things look pretty and it makes us feel good, serotonin release and all that kind of thing, or whether it's something that genuinely sits there and adds some kind of value to the home, it doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. Now, it's interesting about this whole sense of spirit of place, and talking of spirit of place itself, the Romans had this concept of genius loci, which was quite literally spirit of place, or land spirit essentially. And when there were structures built on these lands, there would often be offerings made to entice this spirit into the home to become a lares familiares, which was essentially a familiar spirit. And these were interacted with and made offerings to. And you see this in things like Scandinavian culture and in English culture as well, with things like brownies and little gnomes and things like, hobgoblins, tomties in Scandinavia. These little kind of, I suppose, anthropomorphized, but little human kind of concepts. The hidden folk, as they're often known. Things that you don't see but are considered to be helpful spirits, benevolent spirits, and that you want to keep them happy by keeping a tidy home and keeping a home that's well ordered. And I think it's interesting to have that as a point of focus. So we have several ways to interact with our home in terms of offerings. We can view it very much in a more sceptical fashion of, look, tidying, cleaning, I can make that magical by incorporating certain ingredients, by cleaning in certain directions and all that sort of thing. We can think of it as an offering to the home, and we might do that offering via, touching up some paintwork, or via getting a new cutlery set, or things like this, just little basic stuff. We could think of it as an offering to the familiar spirit of Roman culture and of Northern European culture in terms of the tomti, the brownies, little spirits. And it's really cross-cultural, so that's a great open practice that you can often incorporate in. With that, I've found that a very helpful way for myself, and I've had some personal experiences that I'll share with you. But just to focus on how I actually go about it is, I have obviously a space for my ancestors. I've spoken about ancestor veneration before, and I have a space for my familiar spirits and for the household spirits itself. And this is somewhere that incorporates a visualization or a representation of the overall structure, and it also incorporates little elements of the surrounding area to really ground it into location. As well as this, I will put certain crystals there, certain charms there. Depends on what I'm thinking, really. But I find that a really helpful focus for me to really get my magic into that particular space when I'm focusing on the home and the house itself. And as I say, I incorporate that kind of touch and that ritual touch. So I'll share with you some personal experience that I had with what I deem to be a house spirit, or at least a occurrence. And it goes back to the time when me and my wife had moved into this really ramshackle flat, and it was just really poorly maintained and everything. The previous tenant unfortunately been quite troubled. They'd been writing all over the walls, and they'd passed away in the flat. And for the first couple of months we felt this presence, and so initially I kept it to myself because I thought I didn't want to scare my wife, and I was also thinking, you're probably making it up or whatever. So when she said, no, I feel it too, I thought it's time for some protection magic. So I popped some black tourmaline above the doorway, and I like that as a repellent. I find it quite helpful for reducing or repelling any kind of psychic attack or anything like that. And I also put a little elf door. Normally you can get them around Yuletide or Christmas time, and you can get them wood, you can get them little sort of resin ones, you can get little stickers, and they're often used as a representation of a house spirit, or where a house spirit would live. So I put this little elf door, this house spirit door, on the outside wall where the bedroom is, and I make some offerings, and sure enough the presence sort of eventually goes away, it sort of dissipates. And then at Yuletide I put a little Christmas card there. I was maintaining this kind of relationship with this house spirit and saying, look, I'm here now, I am investing in you, I am appreciating you. And I felt like the building or the house or the flat or whatever you want to call it, it was a bit cautious. So I never really knew exactly where I stood with this sort of house spirit as such. But then we were due to go on holiday, and this mouse had got in, and as I say, it was pretty ramshackled flats. There was holes here, there, and everywhere, and this mouse had got in. We kept trying to find it. We didn't want to kill it. We just wanted to catch it and get rid of it humanely, release it somewhere else. And we couldn't find it. It got to the point where we had to go on holiday. We'd booked this time off, and the wife jokingly says, "Don't worry, the house spirit will sort it out." Well, we go on holiday, we come back, and we open the door, and sure enough there, dead as a doornail, is this mouse. And where is it sitting but by the elf door? So that was one of those moments of fun coincidence, of the elf giving us this sort of gift of home protection, of going, you know what, there you go, I sorted it out. You asked me, I've done it. And, obviously it would be nice if the mouse had managed to sort of get out and stay out, but it didn't, and it passed away, which is a sad thing, but it also solved our problem. And it was really one of those sort of funny things, and it's interesting because it fits well with folklore and also with herb lore as well, about remedies for elf shot, because you find in folklore this sense of elf shot where there's like small darts that elves or hidden folk or those kind of spirits throw out at livestock and things like that, and they were often blamed for sort of random sicknesses in livestock. They said they were elf shot. Was it elf shot? Was it just someone else had put down some poison or something? I don't know. But that's our little tale of our interactions with the house spirit. So our magical thing to do today is going to give us a bit of a blueprint on how to incorporate magic into the home and what hotspots we really need to focus on. We've done the magical theory, let's do the magical thing. Okay, witches, here's our magical thing to do. We're going to create a magical blueprint to really help centre our magic and to continue it, maintain it as we go throughout our living space. And what we're going to start with is a floor plan of where we live or what living space we're in. Now, this one is one I've made up, and it contains most of the things that people will have in their homes. Maybe you've got a study as well, maybe you've got a dining room, or whatever it is. This is all about you, so you create your own version. Now, for each of these spaces, I want you to write down what associations you have with it. And you can do this by thinking about, what activities you do in each space. So, for example, in the bathroom, we think about washing and cleansing and relaxing as well, if we can. And with these, I want you to think about what element you would choose to associate with each room. So for me, I think the bathroom's another easy example, isn't it? Because we think of water with washing and cleansing. With the kitchen, we think of fire because of that literal fire, but also the idea of transforming ingredients into a meal, into energy and so forth. And so we can assign an element for each room. And this helps us really from the correspondences of these elements. It helps us not only in terms of the association, but with colour magic. So we could put in some decorations or maybe paint the walls a particular shade of one of the colours associated with that element. Or we could just, as I say, by little highlighting things, maybe it's a little objet d'art or something, that's fine. Now, not only that, but we can also use the symbols of each element to help connect to that space. As I said about touch being one of my favourite tools when it comes to house magic, we can use our hands to draw the glyph of whatever element it is we associate with that room into the walls, connecting ourselves to it, and also setting the expectation through the associations to those elements. Now, what ways can we support this assignment of these things? Well, we can do things like with the kitchen, we can have that kitchen witch in there as a charm to aid and protect. With the bathroom, perhaps we might make some kind of cleansing soap or buy some sort of oils that are really associated with helping our magic and enhancing our magic. Certain things we could put in the bath or shower. With the living room with earth and the idea of connecting to people and having that sense of grounding, we might create some sort of charm of, a sweetening charm, maybe some sort of charm for really helping to build connection with others or with ourselves. And with the bedroom with air and with that idea of sleep and rest and pleasure, perhaps we'd have some certain herbs we would keep in there, certain crystals or whatever it is that are associated with enhancing these things that we end up doing. So that really looks at all of those different aspects magically. Now, mundanely, or more mundane at least, we can look at the days of the week to consider how we can incorporate this elemental and colour magic too. And with the element side of things, each day of the week has a planetary ruler, which is like the moon, Mars, Mercury, and each of those planets has an associated element to it. So for instance, the moon is associated with water. So on Monday, perhaps we might want to give the bathroom a clean or a revamp or just have a bath that day, connect with that element. Tuesday, we think of fire. So perhaps that's a day we really want to get into the kitchen, give it a good scrub, or we want to make a particularly hearty meal that day. It's all about really compounding this association, all these correspondences in to really feel that connection to your space. Now, say you have just a room, that's fine. You can create an association of elements to different parts of that room, different corners of the room, the walls, the ceiling, if there's a window in there. Be creative with where you want these focuses. And again, you can even put a symbol of the element on the wall if that's not going to get you into trouble. You could put a colour on each wall if you're just in a singular space. And there's no harm in but especially with that drawing of sigils in certain places, if you're associating with that and it's a shared space, that's not going to leave anything other than magically. It's not going to leave any kind of mark in other places. You're not going to be imposing your magic and your interests on somebody else. You can also, in whatever space you feel is appropriate, create that offering place for your home. And what I did was I made painted up a little representation of the building, and with it I keep little things inside it, like some bits of, if I show you this, these are just little bits of grit and things that are from the local area, very much associated with the space I live in. And I also mentioned about giving particular offerings. So I have little offering bowls that I use, and I place my offering on top. This is some regularly topped up wine, or rather alcohol at least. But it doesn't have to be alcoholic, it could be anything you like. That I refresh, but I also have ones that are permanent fixtures, and this is some oats and some more of the wine there too. So with this, it's something that I feel is helpful to focus really on your particular space. And what I do also, as well as having this offering in place, I incorporate parts of the local area, things that are nearby, to really give that sense of grounding. And as you can see, it doesn't have to be anything huge. It doesn't have to be some great big, statue somewhere. It's just something small that can be placed and offered to, and it really helps, as I say, to make yourself feel that amount of connection there. I've got some recommendations for you book-wise. The Tradition of Household Spirits by Claude Le Couteau is one of my favourites for this. It really looks into, as it says, ancestral law and practices, mainly of Northern Europe, so it's quite good for open practices that you can look back at and research. And it's quite interesting because it looks at the structure of the house itself, but it also looks at things that have been placed within it, traditions around, marking out new houses, and really focusing on all sorts of things that incorporate the home, such as the stove, such as the walls, everything, and also the house spirits themselves, and how to sort of go about dealing with those. And a more modern sort of take, I suppose, is the House Witch. This is focused particularly on witches, and this will help you do the sort of how-to side of things with it. This is Erin Murphy Hiscock, and she mentions various things such as building yourself a particular offering place, and all sorts of practices really, including certain certain rituals that she's come up with. So that might be of interest to witches. So all of this said, hopefully this has given you some ideas for doing the magical thing in your home and getting things a little bit more laid out. I'll get more specific with certain practices within the home in future videos. Until next time, health and wealth.